Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we've got this Kershaw Dividend Model 1812 to sharpen up. Alright, so the 1812, the Dividend, is a very thin blade with a real thin hollow grind. So what we're going to do is we're going to chuck this thing up. We do have some flat here, so we don't have to use the command strips or double-sided tape or anything. So we're going to chuck this guy up, and we're going to find what Kershaw did as far as secondary bevel. And I'm going to guess with Kershaw we're at 18 or 20 degrees. So we'll stick our marker up here and get our 1500 grit stone and see what we get. Way too tall. Still too tall. Barely getting it. We'll bottom it out and see what we get. And there we're pretty close. In fact, I think we're right on it. So bottomed out on this thing we have... I'm not digging that. It says 13.5 degrees. So we're going to bring that back up to what registers as 15 degrees. See what that does. That's pretty close as well. So that's where we're going to start. I don't, anything less than 15 degrees, I'm not a fan of unless you got a super thin blade. And this blade is pretty thin, but it's not any thinner than a Delica blade, so we're not going past 15 degrees. And that is the one thing I do want to talk about real quick before we jump into sharpening this thing. People will ask, what is the math? How do you figure out what angle to put on your secondary bevel? Well, to be honest with you, there's not a math problem I use. There's not some fancy, formula, and this is exactly right or that's exactly right. For me, it just doesn't work that way. I'm sure there are some people out there that do that, and you're just not going to see my hands because this is 420HC, and 420HC bites. It gets a sticky edge, and man, this knife has cut me. And I think every 420HC blade I've ever sharpened has cut me. I was just cutting out some boxes, and this thing attacked my leg. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen the Band-Aid pictures. But anyhow, figuring out what angle you want to use. Basically, if we've got a blade that's fairly thin, it's down around that 2.5 millimeter, Delica thickness, 15 degrees is about what I would like to see. And, here's a Delica, and it's got a 15 degree secondary bevel, and then it's got about an 18 or 19 degree micro bevel. You guys tell me, I forget exactly what I put on it. And that's what I like to see out of a thin blade. Even this Mantra, that is a 15 degree secondary bevel and then probably an 18 or 19 degree micro on it as well. But it doesn't always work that way. If you took this Hinderer and you put a 15 degree bevel on it, secondary bevel on it, your secondary bevel would be 1/4 of an inch thick. It would be really high up the blade because it's nowhere near as thin behind the edge. And that's okay. That's the way this knife was designed. It's a heavy-duty, hard-use knife, so it is thicker behind the edge. I think I ended up going with an 18 degree secondary bevel on this one and probably a 20 or 21 degree micro bevel. That's just kind of how the game goes. You kind of got to figure out what you want, what kind of thickness you've got behind the edge. Same thing here with this Strider. I'm not sure what Nick put on it, but I'm guessing it's somewhere around 19 or 20 degrees. And it's fine. Heavy duty knife, thicker behind the edge, you've got to do that. But for our dividend, and for all of our little skinny blades, our light EDC slicers, 15 degrees is the number I would like to see. So that's what we're going to do. And just like with all of them, I'm going to start with the 50 grit stone. I'm going to get my bevels set, and then I'll move up through the grits. Now, one thing to be aware of here, and if you watched Birdshot 4's video on this, they pointed this out. There's no sharpening choil, so this is like a Spyderco, only worse. Spyderco generally has a bit of a hook back there, but this one has the hook, and then it just kind of falls off the end of the world. So we're going to try to straighten that up a little bit with this 50 grit stone. And to be quite honest, it may straighten up really well. It may get to a point where it looks like I'm going to be taking away too much material. And if that happens, I won't. But anyhow, let's get to it. Okay, we're apexed at 50 grit. And we're reasonably sharp. At this 420HC, well, we got too much burr on that backside. It's hard to clean the burr off at 50 grit. This 420HC is so soft, it just a couple of passes and it'll roll the burr up on the other side. So can't really do much till we get to the higher grits with 420HC. But there we go. And as you can see down here, I'm not going to go through all the trouble the bird did to fix that. What he did was a beautiful thing, but we're just going to make it sharp. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the grits all the way up to 1500. If I come up with something that I need to tell you about, I'll stop. Otherwise, I'll see you whenever we hit 1500 grit. Okay, here we are at 140 when we're able to start cleaning up the burr off the back a little easier. So at 140 grit, we're plenty sharp. So I'm going to move on along. Alright, here we are at 1500 grit, and quite honestly guys, for 420HC you could stop here, micro bevel it and be fine. But since we've got them, we're going to go ahead and use the lapping films and take this thing on up. Now, just like I've said before, you want to get these things out of the way. All of your other stuff out of the way, and wipe everything down. Man, it's storming outside, something fierce. Wow. Because these lapping films, especially with a soft steel like this, oh my goodness. You get a little bit of something that ain't supposed to be there and it's going to scratch it up. But we'll go with start with our 9 micron and work our way up to wherever things start to look good, if I can find my oil. Alright, that was 0.1 micron. Now we're going to set up for our micro bevel. I'm going to take this up to what reads out at 19. And then we're going to go back to the 600 grit stone and micro bevel this guy. And micro beveling, you know, some of you are probably saying, oh my god, you're going to spend the extra time to micro bevel a cheap steel? Well, I just spent the extra 15 minutes to put a extreme mirror polish on the cheap steel. So yeah, we're going to micro bevel it because I don't want to have to put that mirror polish on it again. Not that it takes very long. In fact, you know, this whole operation took, with me talking and everything, 30 or 40 minutes. If I had just sat down to do it by myself, we're probably talking 20 minutes. Maybe even less. Anyhow, we got to find those stones again. Where'd they go? And micro beveling, I'm just going to give this about 5 good passes. That's like 3, 4, 5. Now, why didn't I give it 10 like I did the HAP 40 or the M390 or whatever it was, the last stuff we sharpened? It doesn't need it. There's a burr cleaning pass, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clean the burr up a couple of times. That's 1 pass per side just to clean that burr up. Then we'll put the 1500 grit stone back on it, and we'll be done. We'll get it out of the sharpener and get a look at it. And with the 1500 grit stone, all we're really doing is giving it a final little polish on that micro bevel and cleaning up that burr. That's why I'm going back and forth after each pass, because the hope here is we can get that burr as small as possible, because all I really want to hit this 420HC with is bare leather whenever we're done with this. I don't want any compound whatsoever on it, because 420HC is soft and I don't want to scratch it up inadvertently with something caught in the compound. Alright, so we'll put everything away and we'll get that thing out of the sharpener. Here's my massive paddle strop. We're gonna run this knife down it once each way like that, maybe a couple times. And then I'm going to raise the angle up quite a bit. And I'm just going to lightly graze the leather. See, I can feel a bit of just a wee bit of a burr on that side. That looks pretty good. And this is what you get out of 420HC whenever you sharpen it up like that. Is it nice and mirrory? Well, yeah and no. We went all the way to 0.1 micron. And I don't know if we can really see it on camera here. Let me try our zoomed in feature here on the camera. But it is not as shiny as, say, M390 or M4 or ZDP 189. And that's just a function of the steel and how the steel works. Not all steels come up to a perfect mirror. Doesn't mean they're not sharp. But, you know, that is 420HC doing some serious cutting. And that old crappy paper. So, anyhow, guys, that's what we got sharpening the Kershaw Dividend model 1812 at 15 degrees per side secondary bevel and 19 degrees per side micro bevel. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed this and maybe you learned a little bit. And you know, I did. I learned that it sure is easier to sharpen 420HC than it is the M390 I sharpened the other night. Anyhow, you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.